The rain fell in sheets, drenching the black suit clinging to Eli's trembling frame as he stood over his father's grave. 3 days ago, he'd held his dad's hand in the hospital, whispering promises to make him proud. Now, those promises felt like ash in his mouth, scattered by the venom of his mother's words, "You're no son of mine." Eli was 18, barely out of high school, and already an orphan in every way that mattered. His father, Tom, had been the anchor in their small Ohio town, a mechanic with a laugh that could fill a room. Cancer took him fast, leaving Eli to face a family that had never truly seen him. Coming out as gay at 16 had been a quiet act of courage, shared only with his dad, who'd hugged him tight and said, "You're my boy, always." But now, with Tom gone, Eli's mother, Ruth, had unleashed years of pent-up rage. At the funeral, she'd caught Eli holding hands with Caleb, his best friend and secret crush, and her face had twisted into something unrecognizable. "Get out," she'd hissed, shoving him toward the door of their family home. "You're a disgrace to your father's memory." The cemetery was empty now, save for Eli and the weight of his mother's rejection. He clutched the single white rose he'd placed on the casket, its petals bruised from his grip. Caleb had wanted to stay, but Eli had sent him away, unable to bear the pity in his friend's eyes. He was alone, his backpack slung over one shoulder, stuffed with the few belongings he'd grabbed before Ruth locked the door behind him. The rain stung his face, mixing with tears he refused to acknowledge. Where could he go? His savings from working at the diner wouldn't last a week, and the nearest shelter was 30 miles away in Columbus. A shadow moved at the edge of his vision. Eli turned, heart pounding, to see a man standing under a gnarled oak tree, dressed in a black coat that seemed to absorb the dim light. He was older, maybe mid-30s, with sharp features and eyes that held a quiet intensity. "You look like you're carrying the world," the stranger said, his voice low but steady, cutting through the rain's rhythm. Eli froze, unsure whether to run or answer. Something about the man's presence felt like a lifeline, though dangerous. Maybe, but undeniable. "Who are you?" Eli asked, his voice hoarse. The stranger stepped closer, rain dripping from the brim of his hood. "Someone who's been where you are," he said. "My name's Marcus." He didn't smile, but there was a warmth in his tone that made Eli's shoulders loosen. Just a fraction. Marcus glanced at the grave, then back at Eli. "You don't have to tell me what happened, but I'm guessing you need a place to go." Eli's instinct was to brush him off, to prove he could handle this alone. But the truth was, he couldn't. Not tonight. Not with the rain soaking through his shoes and the ache in his chest threatening to swallow him whole. "Why do you care?" he asked, almost a challenge. Marcus shrugged, his eyes never leaving Eli's. "Because someone helped me once, and I promised I'd pay it forward." He pulled a card from his pocket, plain white with a phone number scrawled in black ink. "I run a community center in Columbus. It's not much, but it's safe. You can crash there. Figure out your next step. No strings." Eli took the card, his fingers brushing Marcus's. The contact sent a jolt through him. Not romantic, but something deep, a spark of trust he hadn't felt since his dad's last smile. He shoved the card into his pocket, muttering a thank you. Marcus nodded, then turned to leave, his coat blending into the dusk. Call when you're ready, he said over his shoulder. You're not as alone as you think. The rain kept falling. But for the first time that day, Eli felt a flicker of something like hope. He didn't know Marcus. Didn't know if the card was a trap or a miracle. But as he stood by his father's grave, he made a choice. He'd call. He'd take the risk. Because if he didn't, he'd drown not in the rain, but in the weight of being unwanted. Eli hitched a ride to Columbus the next morning. A trucker named Sal who didn't ask too many questions. The city loomed larger than anything Eli had ever known. A maze of glass and concrete that felt both thrilling and terrifying. He clutched Marcus's card like a talisman, dialing the number from a gas station payphone. Marcus's voice was calm, giving directions to a brick building tucked between a laundromat and a pawn shop. The sign out front read, Haven Center. And Eli hesitated at the door, his heart hammering. What if this was a mistake? Inside, the air smelled of coffee and old books. A handful of people milled about, some young, some older, all with stories etched into their faces. Marcus greeted him with a nod. No pressure. No judgment. You made it, he said simply, leading Eli to a small room with a cot and a desk. This is yours for as long as you need it. We've got food, showers, and people who get it. You're not the first kid to walk through that door with nowhere else to go. Eli didn't know how to respond. Gratitude felt too big, too raw. Instead, he asked, Why do you do this? Marcus paused, his eyes distant. I was 16 when my folks kicked me out for the same reason yours did. Someone gave me a chance to start over. Now I give others the same. Over the next week, Eli settled into Haven. He met others like him, kids who'd been rejected, abandoned, or worse, but who were fighting to rebuild. There was Mia, a trans girl with a sharp wit who taught him how to navigate the city's bus system. And Jamal, a quiet guy who'd run from an abusive home and now helped cook meals for the center. Eli found himself drawn to their resilience, their refusal to let the world break them. But he couldn't shake the ache for Caleb, who'd texted him daily, begging to know if he was okay. Eli hadn't replied, too ashamed of his new reality to let Caleb in. One night, Marcus caught Eli staring at his phone, Caleb's name glowing on the screen. You love him, don't you? Marcus asked. No preamble. Eli's face burned, but he nodded. Then don't push him away, Marcus said. The world's hard enough without cutting out the people who matter. Eli's fingers hovered over the reply button. He typed, deleted, typed again. Finally, he sent a single word, sorry. Within minutes, Caleb called, his voice thick with relief. I'm coming to Columbus, he said. I don't care what your mom thinks. I'm not losing you. Caleb's bus pulled into Columbus at dusk, the sky streaked with purple and gold. Eli waited at the station, his stomach knotted with nerves. He hadn't seen Caleb since the funeral, since the moment his mother's words had shattered everything. What if Caleb saw him now homeless, broken, and changed his mind? But when Caleb stepped off the bus, his familiar lopsided grin lit up the dim platform, and Eli's fears dissolved. Caleb didn't hesitate, pulling him into a hug that felt like home. You're an idiot for not texting me sooner, Caleb teased, but his eyes were soft, searching. At 19, Caleb was broader than Eli, his blonde hair perpetually messy, his confidence a quiet force that had always grounded Eli. They'd been inseparable since middle school, their friendship a slow burn towards something neither had fully named until now. "I'm here," Caleb said. "Whatever this is, we figure it out together." They walked back to Haven, Caleb's duffel bag slung over his shoulder. Eli told him everything: the funeral, his mother's betrayal, Marcus's offer. Caleb listened, his hand brushing Eli's as they walked. A silent promise. At Haven, Marcus greeted Caleb with a knowing look. "Another stray." "Huh," he said. But there was no judgment, only a quiet acceptance that made Eli's chest ache with gratitude. Caleb didn't have a plan, just a part-time job at a bookstore back home and a stubborn refusal to let Eli face this alone. Marcus set him up with a cot in Eli's room. And for the first time in weeks, Eli slept without nightmares. But the peace was fragile. Haven was a sanctuary, but it wasn't a home. Eli needed a job, a future, something to prove he wasn't the failure his mother believed him to be. Marcus helped Eli find work at a nearby cafe, a bustling spot where the owner, a gruff woman named Rosa, didn't care about his past as long as he showed up on time. Eli threw himself into the job, memorizing orders and charming customers with a smile that hid his exhaustion. Caleb took shifts at a warehouse, his evenings spent with Eli at Haven, where they'd talk late into the night about dreams they hadn't dared voice before. Caleb wanted to study art. Eli wanted to write, to tell stories that mattered. But dreams felt distant when survival demanded every ounce of energy. One night, Eli overheard Marcus on the phone, his voice tight with worry. "We're running out of funding," he said. "If we don't find a donor soon, Haven might have to close." The words hit Eli like a punch. Haven wasn't just a roof over his head. It was the first place he'd felt safe since his dad died. He couldn't lose it. Not when it was all he had. Eli told Caleb about the call, and they brainstormed ways to help. Caleb suggested a fundraiser, using his art to draw attention to Haven's cause. "We could do an exhibit," he said, eyes bright with possibility. "Show the city what this place means." Eli hesitated. Organizing something that big felt daunting, but Caleb's enthusiasm was infectious. They pitched the idea to Marcus, who looked at them like they'd handed him a miracle. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Caleb painted, his canvases capturing the raw beauty of Haven's residents, their scars, their laughter, their hope. Eli wrote descriptions for each piece, pouring his heart into words that told their stories. Mia and Jamal joined in, helping spread the word through flyers and social media. The community rallied, each person bringing something to the table. Rosa donated coffee for the event. A local band offered to play, and even the pawn shop owner chipped in with a small donation. As the fundraiser approached, Eli felt a shift in himself. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was building something. But doubt lingered. What if it wasn't enough? What if Haven closed, and he and Caleb were back on the streets? And worse, what if his mother was right that he'd never be more than a disappointment? The night before the fundraiser, Eli broke down, his fears spilling out in a rush. Caleb held him, his voice steady. "You're not what she says you are," he whispered. "You're stronger than you know." In that moment, under the dim light of their shared room, Caleb kissed him, soft and certain. It was their first kiss, a quiet declaration that carried them through the night. The fundraiser was held in a borrowed art gallery, A cavernous space with exposed brick walls and soft lighting that made Caleb's paintings glow. Eli stood at the entrance, greeting strangers with a nervous smile, his heart pounding as the room filled. Caleb's art told stories of Haven's resident Smia's defiant grin, Jamal's quiet strength, a young non-binary kid named Alex who'd found refuge after years of rejection. Eli's words framed each piece, raw and honest, drawing gasps and whispers from the crowd. Marcus moved through the room, shaking hands and thanking donors. But Eli could see the strain in his eyes. The goal was $50, 000, to keep Haven open for another year, a number that felt impossible. By midnight, they'd raised half. A miracle in itself. But not enough. Eli's hope wavered. But Caleb squeezed his hand, grounding him. "We're not done yet," he said. A woman in a sharp blazer approached, her eyes fixed on a painting of Eli, his face half lit by a street lamp. Grief and resilience etched into his features. "This is you, isn't it?" she asked. Eli nodded, throat tight. She introduced herself as Lena, a journalist with a local paper. "I want to write about this," she said. "About you. Haven. All of it." Eli hesitated, terrified of exposing his pain to the world. But Caleb's steady presence gave him courage. He agreed, and Lena's article went viral, bringing in donations that pushed them past their goal by dawn. Haven was saved, but the victory was bittersweet. Eli's mother saw the article and called, her voice cold. "You're embarrassing us," she said. "Stop dragging our name through the mud." Eli hung up, trembling. But Marcus was there, his hand on Eli's shoulder. "You're not her shame," he said. "You're your father's pride." Eli and Caleb grew closer, their relationship a quiet anchor in the chaos. They moved into a tiny apartment, scraping by on their wages but building a life together. Eli started writing again, small pieces for local blogs, each word a step toward healing. Caleb's art gained traction, his work shown in galleries across the city. But the past wasn't done with them. A letter arrived from Eli's mother, demanding he return home to fix himself. It shook him, dragging up old wounds. But Caleb burned the letter in their kitchen sink, his eyes fierce. "You're already whole," he said. Marcus became a mentor, sharing his own story of survival and love. He'd lost his partner years ago, a wound that still ached. But he'd found purpose in Haven. "You and Caleb," he told Eli, "you're proof that love can win, even when it's hard." Eli's writing began to take off, his essays about identity and resilience catching the eye of a small press. They offered him a chance to publish a collection, a dream he'd buried long ago. But the offer came with a catch. They wanted him to write about his mother, to confront the pain head-on. Eli froze, the thought of exposing that wound paralyzing. Caleb urged him to try. "Your story could help someone," he said. "It's not about her, it's about you." Eli spent nights at their kitchen table, scribbling drafts that tore him apart. Each word felt like a betrayal, not of his mother, but of the boy who'd once hoped she'd love him. Caleb read every draft, offering quiet encouragement, his belief in Eli unwavering. When the manuscript was done, Eli felt lighter, as if he'd shed a weight he hadn't known he carried. The book's release was quiet, but its impact rippled. Letters poured in from readers' kids like Eli, Parents who'd lost their way. Strangers who'd found hope in his words. One letter stood out, and signed, but in his mother's handwriting. I read it. It said, "I don't understand, but I'm trying." It wasn't an apology, but it was something. Eli tucked it away, unsure if he'd ever respond. Marcus threw a small party at Haven to celebrate. The room filled with laughter and music. Mia danced with Alex. Jamal grilled burgers. And Caleb pulled Eli into a slow dance. Their foreheads pressed together. "I'm proud of you," Caleb whispered. Eli kissed him, no longer afraid of who might see. But the past wasn't done. A man showed up at Haven, claiming to be Eli's uncle, sent by his mother to bring him home. The confrontation was tense, voices rising until Marcus stepped in, his calm authority diffusing the situation. Eli stood his ground, refusing to go. "This is my home," he said, gesturing to Caleb, Marcus, and the others. The uncle left, but the encounter left Eli shaken, questioning how much he'd truly moved on. Eli's book gained traction, earning him a speaking gig at a local university. He stood before a crowd of students, his voice steady as he shared his journey, grief, rejection, and the slow rebuilding of a life worth living. Caleb sat in the front row, his smile a quiet anchor. The Q&A session brought a surprise. A young man, barely 16, asked how to tell his parents he was gay. Eli's answer was honest, raw. "Find one person who sees you. They'll carry you until you're strong enough to stand." After the talk, the young man, Sam, approached Eli, tears in his eyes. He'd been kicked out, just like Eli, and was sleeping on a friend's couch. Eli brought him to Haven, introducing him to Marcus, who welcomed him without hesitation. Watching Sam settle in, Eli felt a purpose he hadn't known he could claim. He wasn't just surviving. He was helping others do the same. Caleb's art career flourished, his paintings now selling for enough to cover their rent. But success brought pressure. A gallery owner in New York offered Caleb a solo show, a chance that could change everything. It meant leaving Columbus, leaving Eli, at least for a while. The decision hung between them, heavy and unspoken. Eli wanted to support Caleb, but the thought of being apart tore at him. One night, they fought. Their first real argument. Caleb accused Eli of holding him back. Eli accused Caleb of running away. The words cut deep, and Caleb stormed out, leaving Eli alone in their apartment. Hours later, Marcus called, his voice urgent. "Caleb's at Haven. He's a mess. Get over here." Eli found Caleb in the art room, paint smudged on his hands, a half-finished canvas showing two figures under a stormy sky. "I don't want to lose you," Caleb said, his voice breaking. Eli pulled him close, their fight dissolving in the warmth of their embrace. "We'll figure it out," Eli promised. "Together." Caleb took the New York offer, but they made a plan. Eli would join him after finishing a second book, a sequel that chronicled Haven's impact. The distance was hard, their calls filled with longing, but they made it work. Eli threw himself into writing, spending days at Haven, mentoring kids like Sam. Marcus became a father figure, his quiet wisdom guiding Eli through doubt. One day, a package arrived from Eli's mother, a photo of him and his dad, taken when Eli was 10, laughing in their old garage. A note read, "He'd be proud." Eli cried, not for the mother he'd lost, but for the father he'd carry forever. He called Caleb, sharing the moment, their connection unbroken by miles. When Eli finished his manuscript, he flew to New York for Caleb's show. The gallery was packed, Caleb's paintings a vibrant testament to their journey. Eli's book was displayed alongside, a symbol of their shared strength. They stood together, hands entwined, as strangers praised their work. Marcus was there, too, his smile proud. "You too," he said. "You're unstoppable." But life wasn't a fairy tale. Caleb's show was a success, but the art world was brutal, and Eli's book faced harsh reviews from those who called it too emotional. They leaned on each other, weathering the highs and lows. Haven expanded, thanks to new donors, and Eli took a part-time role, helping Marcus run programs for queer youth. Eli and Caleb settled in New York, their apartment small but filled with love. Eli's second book found a cult following, its honesty resonating with readers who'd faced similar struggles. Caleb's art evolved, his new series exploring family chosen and lost. They visited Columbus often, helping at Haven, where Sam was now a peer mentor, his own story one of triumph. One spring, Eli's mother reached out, asking to meet. Eli agreed, but only with Caleb by his side. The meeting was tense, her words halting but sincere. "I was wrong," she said, tears in her eyes. "I want to know you." Eli didn't forgive her. Not fully, but he let her in, a small step toward healing. Caleb squeezed his hand, a silent reminder of their strength. Marcus's health began to falter, years of stress catching up. Eli and Caleb rallied the Haven community, ensuring his legacy would endure. They raised funds for a new wing, named after Marcus, a place for art and writing workshops. At the opening, Marcus pulled Eli aside. "You've given me more than I ever gave you," he said. Eli shook his head, tears falling. "You saved me first." Years later, Eli and Caleb stood at Tom's grave, now weathered but adorned with fresh flowers. They were older, their love tempered by time but stronger for it. Eli's books had inspired a generation. Caleb's art hung in museums. Haven thrived, a beacon for those society cast aside. Marcus had passed, but his spirit lived in every kid they helped. Eli knelt, placing a white rose on the grave. "I made it, Dad," he whispered. Caleb pulled him close, their rings glinting in the sunlight. They'd married quietly, surrounded by their chosen family, a vow to face the world together. The cemetery was peaceful, the sky clear. Eli thought of the stranger in black, the man who'd changed his fate. Marcus hadn't just given him a place to stay. He'd given him a reason to fight, to love, to live. And in that moment, Eli knew, no matter what the world threw at them, he and Caleb would always find their way. Their story wasn't just about surviving rejection. It was about building a life where love could flourish, where pain could transform into purpose. As they walked away, hand in hand, Eli felt his father's pride, carried not in words, but in the life he dared to claim.